When it comes to bowel movements, size matters. The larger your poo, the lower your risk of colon cancer. I'm Dr. Robynne Chutkan, gastroenterologist, microbiome expert, and author, and I am here to help you find gut bliss. "2011 was a big year for poo. Literally. The Bowels of the Earth contest, I'm sure you've heard of it, was an international competition to determine which country had the largest poos. Basically, Poo Olympics. And the winning nation weighed in at 531 grams of poo. That's around 1.2 pounds, about the same weight as a small head of cabbage. So, what country is credited for having such Mama Jama stool? The Kingdom of Tonga, a Polynesian country consisting of over 170 islands. Coming in at second place after Tonga was India, who got the silver with a 311-gram poo. And in third place, Japan at 195 grams. Bumming the rear in last place for the smallest stools in the world, the United States of America. Now, keep in mind, these numbers I'm telling you about represented the average stool size from each country. But in the actual competition in 2011, there were stools from India that weighed almost 4 pounds. And there were some as small as 3 ounces from New York. In the words of Dr. Michael Greger, whose fantastic organization nutritionfacts.org was a source of some of these statistics, instead of just living there, if only New Yorkers would actually eat a big apple once in a while. The Gut Bliss podcast is brought to you by Visbiome, my first and quite frankly, my only choice for a probiotic. Whether you're dealing with irritable bowel syndrome or just looking to restore your gut health, Visbiome can help. It's a medical food for the dietary management of IBS and gut inflammation. Backed by science and clinically vetted by thousands of my own patients. Find your gut bliss with Visbiome. Go to visbiome.com/gutbliss and use discount code GUTBLISS at checkout. Now, for some direction on how you can have a Mama Jama stool, let's take a look at what the Bowels of the Earth winners in Tonga were eating to produce their 1.2 pounds of poo. The traditional diet in Tonga includes a lot of root vegetables like taro and sweet potatoes, and also cabbage, leafy greens, and fruit. And it's that high fiber, unprocessed plant food that gave them those gold medal poos. But that was back in 2011. And unfortunately, the local diet in Tonga has changed dramatically since then. And as a result, they're now dealing with an obesity epidemic. People in Tonga currently eat a more Western diet with a lot of salty and calorie-dense imported food like Spam and corned beef instead of locally cultivated fruits, vegetables, and fish. And as you might expect, they are not producing those champion poos anymore. For the Bowels of the Earth contest, the minimal fecal output goal was about 200 grams a day, which is a little less than half a pound. But stool weight isn't just about admiring your handiwork before you flush. The weight of your poo is inversely related to your colon cancer risk. The smaller your stool, the higher your risk of colon cancer. And that's because stool size is a reflection of the amount of fiber you're consuming. And a high-fiber diet is protective against colon cancer. So while you may not be pulling out your scale and weighing your stool every time you have a bowel movement, I want you to keep that half a pound target in mind. That's the goal for how much stool you want to be producing every day to dramatically reduce your risk of colon cancer. And for reference, half a pound, that's about the size of a very big banana or 2 small bananas, or the size of a plantain, the banana's larger cousin. And speaking of plantains, and you might call them plantains. I hail from the Commonwealth. I say plantain, but I know in the US people often say plantain. We're talking about the same thing. It is worth noting that in countries where people eat a more traditional diet that includes food like plantains, they have big poos and low rates of colon cancer. I'm talking about countries like Ghana, Jamaica, and the Seychelles. L'adobe is a staple food in the Seychelles cuisine, and it's prepared using ripe plantains and sweet potatoes cooked with some coconut milk and nutmeg. In Ghana, kelewele is a popular street food that is made from spice plantain. And I credit spending the first decade of my life in Jamaica eating food like plantains from my grandfather's farm with my own gold medal poo aspirations. The average fiber consumption in the US is only about 10 to 15 grams a day, despite the nutritional recommendations of 25 to 30 grams of fiber. And even those 10 to 15 grams that we're eating often consist of processed fiber, like breakfast cereal and bread, which is much less effective at preventing diseases like colon cancer. So how exactly does dietary fiber decrease your risk for colon cancer? Number one, it displaces high-fat foods like red meat on your plate that are known to be carcinogenic. Red meat enhances the production of bile acids in the gut that are associated with colon cancer. Number two, dietary fiber shortens your colonic transit time, the amount of time it takes your products of digestion to move from your mouth to your anus. And during that transit time, the products of digestion, when they include fiber, bind a wide variety of potentially toxic compounds, reducing the contact between those carcinogens in the gut and your gut lining. And number three, dietary sources of fiber, which often include things like fruits and vegetables, contain a lot of micronutrients that contain compounds that protect us against cancer. Human colon cancer cells grown in mice show enhanced growth when the animals are fed a high-fat diet. But when fiber is added, the effects of the high-fiber diet are decreased. So it's not about never eating fat. It's about eating lots and lots of fiber so that you can attenuate the negative effects of the fat. Another study reported a significant correlation between stool weight, dietary fiber intake, and colon cancer risk in 12 different countries. Based on their analysis, they determined that if you're eating more than about 18 grams of fiber a day, you should be having stools with an average weight of around 150 grams a day, a third of a pound, and that should be enough to protect you against colon cancer. Now, what foods are going to give you the biggest poos? My personal go-to formula is 20 to 30 ounces of my gutless green smoothie in the morning that contains 2 to 3 leafy greens, a little celery, and some fruit. Then some split pea soup or really any kind of veggie soup for lunch. And then for dinner, brown rice, lentils, and either salad or sauteed spinach. If you eat like that, I guarantee you are going to have awesome poos the next morning. I also guarantee that you are going to have some gas at some point during the day or night. But that's okay, because that is good gas. It's a kind of gas that means your microbes are happy because they're digesting all that poorly digestible fiber that you yourself cannot fully digest. And the reason you can't fully digest it is because it's not meant for you. It is there to feed your gut bacteria so that they can churn out substances like short-chain fatty acids that keep your gut lining healthy and protect you from colon cancer. Beans are an incredible source of fiber. The average cup of beans has about 15 grams of fiber, so you're almost at your daily goal with that. A recent study showed that a cup of navy beans a day can not only decrease your risk of colon cancer, but it can also decrease the likelihood of recurrence in colon cancer survivors. So talk about food as medicine. Broccoli and berries are two other great high-fiber foods that also contain lots of healthy micronutrients. So when you think about upping your fiber intake, I want you to think about the 3 Bs: beans, broccoli, and berries. And I want to remind you that stool nirvana is not just about getting up off the toilet feeling detoxed and rejuvenated after dropping a gold medal poo. It's also about serious stuff, like dramatically decreasing the likelihood that you are going to be one of the 1 in 24 people diagnosed with colon cancer in their lifetime, 150,000 Americans every year. Colon cancer is now the number 1 cause of cancer deaths in men under 50 and the number 2 cause of cancer deaths in women under 50. So I want to leave you with 3 takeaways about Mama Jama poos. Number 1, size matters. The bigger your poo, the lower your likelihood of colon cancer, as well as other GI problems like diverticulosis, hemorrhoids, constipation, and irritable bowel syndrome. Number 2, You don't just want big poos, you want regular poos. If you don't have a bowel movement for 4 or 5 days, you're going to accumulate a pretty big log at the end of that 4 or 5 days. But you may not be hitting that minimal fecal output goal of 200 grams a day, the plantain-size poo. So if you want to have gold medal poos, you need to focus on your fiber intake. And don't be satisfied with just a bronze or silver. Go for the gold and aim for 25 to 30 grams of fiber and at least half a pound of stool every day. So that's it for this edition of the Gut Bliss podcast on Mama Jama poos, how to get them and why you need them. Coming up next week on the Gut Bliss podcast, blood in the stool for over 6 months, but the doctor is saying you don't need a colonoscopy. True story about how to navigate the medical system to get to the right answer. Go to gutbliss.com for my free 7-day microbiome reboot course. If you like what you're hearing, drop a review and hit that subscribe button. And remember, dirt, sweat, vegetables, the best prescription for a healthy gut.
The information presented in this show is not meant to be medical advice. Consult your doctor before making any decisions about your health. The patients discussed are real people, but names and identifying features have been changed to protect their privacy.